And now we're connecting to the cloud. Okay, great. And this should be recording. I don't see it recording, so I'm going to press a button in a second, and the room is filling up.
I see
which
it.
is amazing. Oh, good, it is. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, good. See, I told you I'm on this new Mac, and things are just kind of funky. I'm figuring out my way. So friends who are populating the room, which there are many already, if you are here for this really special Star Wars event with Justina Ireland and EK Johnston, you were in the right place. I'm gonna let this kind of taper off a second. And usually this is the time when I kind of like do a little friendly banter and ask what's behind you, and usually it's a bookshelf. So I see EK that you have a bookshelf behind you, so now I'm gonna like call it out. Oh, I know, I see the BB-8s, I know. But I want to talk about the books. So like what's behind you and favorites.
So this is my random shelf. It's my shelf of me, so these are all my books. My shelf of adult romance, and then one of many shelves of my TBR.
Nice. Yeah, many. Yeah, yes to the many. Yes. So is there anything that you're looking forward to, either of you, on your TBR list? I mean, is there something where you're like, yes, this is the book I'm reading in 2021?
I've just forgotten every book that's ever been written.
Just thinking, I was like, books for those.
What books?
Who that? I don't know her.
New shelf, who dis? No books. No, there are no books.
Pretty much. I'm really looking forward to Illusionary, which is the second book in Zoraida Cordova's duology that started with Incendiary last year. It had one of those endings where you're like, the writer! And so I have an arc for book 2 that's on my, if you get your work done this week, you can read it on the weekend list. And I got my work done this week, so.
Yeah, for getting your work done in the COVIDs. Good for you. You are better than me. I got no work done this week. Yeah.
I cut myself a lot of breaks.
Hey, you know what? And that's okay too. That's good. Justina, what's on your two? Like, what's the thing that you can't wait to put your hands on and read it?
Man, I don't know. Honestly, I'm trying to think. I've been like, since the pandemic started, I've been just working, and I've kind of like fallen away. Like, I used to be able to tell you like every book that was coming out, and I think now I'm like, I can't think of a single book. I will say I just picked up a middle grade book that looks really exciting. It's called Wolf for a Spell. So I'm excited about that. I can't remember the author, so don't ask, but it's got a really great cover. And so my library is really awesome. So I split my stuff between buying books and going to library, because I get so many books. At some point, my husband's like, this is out of control. So I can't own every book. And so even when I buy books, I tend to donate them afterwards, because I don't have the shelf space. But this one is a really cool story. I just picked up at the library. And then the other thing I just read that I think is exciting, it's also middle grade, is Natalie Parker's The Devouring Wolf.
I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous you got to read that.
Yeah, I just read it for her. And Natalie Parker's, her final book in our trilogy, the Seafire trilogy, which is like
Stormbreak?
Dystopian feature. Yeah, Stormbreak comes out, I think, next week, right? So next week after?
I don't remember.
I'm sorry. Time is like a squishy Jello mold.
It is, no, for real. Yes.
And there's like a cocktail in there, and I'm like, is it Saturday or Tuesday?
Yeah, no, for real. Yes. Well, those are. I'm going to look for those. I'm going to write those down. Yes. Yeah. Yes. That's exciting. Oh, I'm so glad I asked. I never regret asking that question. This is so great. So our room is still populating, believe it or not, but I'm going to get us started because it's like such a short hour. So friends, my name is Kira Wilson Cook. I am the events coordinator for the Silver Unicorn Bookstore in Acton, Massachusetts. I am here for a really special event with Justina Ireland as we celebrate, I just put down this book, the release of her brand new book, A Test of Courage, which is in the Star Wars universe, the High Republic new series, which takes place, it's my understanding, it takes place 200 years before the Phantom Menace. Like it's a prequel to all the prequels.
Yeah, it's a prequel to all the prequels.
Yes. And so this is like super crazy special, like crazy super special. And she is here in conversation with fellow Star Wars author, and a fellow speculative writer, E.K. Johnston, who is the author of the Ashoka series, well, the series book, but we have questions about that. I have questions about that. And I just spoke something into the ether for you. And the Padma series, which features the Queen's Shadow and Queen's Peril, which is it's so exciting that we kind of went back to that character, who is a really interesting character also in this universe. So again, many questions. So questions were taken by the audience, from the audience before this. So I'm actually going to disable the chat and the Q&A, sorry in advance. But your questions, if you submitted them in advance, will be answered. So they're in my special notebook, so don't you worry. This is the part where I say I've been rambling, because I have. I'm going to disappear while you two awesome authors talk, and then I will be back in about 25 minutes with these questions. Thank you so much for being part of our evening and speaking with our book community and letting us kind of talk to your fan base and just say hello. It's a big, huge honor for our bookstore and for me personally. So I'm grateful for your presence. Thank you so much.
I am grateful to be here. Every day above ground is a great day.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So I did prepare some questions.
I was just gonna chit chat.
I mean, I see, that was the thing. Like, I was like, I haven't seen Justina in almost a year. I wonder if anyone would mind if we just talked. and then Lissa was like, do you need help crafting questions? And I was like, oh, Lissa is our amazing publicist, who is amazing. Like tireless, wonderful, just a machine. Like, she's so good. So she sent me an email. She was like, do you need help crafting questions? And I was like, no, I'll do some prep work on my own, I guess. But no, I was super proud of you guys. So at Celebration in 2019 in Chicago, I looked at the panel schedule and I was like, gosh, the Del Rey panel is so weird. Why are those authors on that panel? That doesn't make any sense. And then I was at the Del Rey booth when everything was announced. And Elizabeth was like, do you want to know what it is? And I was like, of course I want to know what it is. But you guys have sat on this forever. So first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
This is beyond exciting. I can't believe how long you had to stay quiet about it. Like,
it's like holding a breath for a really long
forever.
time.
Like I had to sit on Queen's Shadow for 13 months and it was awful. Like I had to lie to people that I know and care about and all that kind of stuff. But
like living in a house of lies.
Total house of lies, castle of lies, kingdom of lies. So I just wanted to say, like, I'm so glad that you guys are finally getting your moment. And I know everybody was worried with like pandemic and shenanigans and all that kind of stuff. And like, so yesterday when the New York Times list was announced, Justina listed it at number 2 on the middle grade list, which is like hard unless you're like Rick Riordan. And Charles listed at number 1, which is hard unless you're James Patterson. So like, right? Like, so it's like, it's been fantastic. And the fans are there and they're so excited for like brand new Star Wars. And I have to tell you, I read your book this afternoon. Cause I was like, I want to read it and then talk to Justina immediately at like peak E.K. Johnston. Cause you know how I get, right? I'm like, so you're getting peak E.K. Johnston right now.
Peak.
I'm going to be mad about that thing that starts with a CH later, but we'll talk about that because it's kind of spoilery. And so I just wanted to ask, like, from the very beginning, what was it like, or what are you allowed to tell us about what it was like to get that phone call that was like, hi, like we have a Star Wars project for you, but it's a little bit different this time. What was that like?
So you and I have had lots of conversations about Star Wars. And one of the conversations, the first conversation we had at that writing retreat in Tennessee, you were like, you would be great at writing Star Wars. And I was like, I can't write Star Wars because I'm not a big enough fan. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like you know this stuff. There's like this sense of like kind of imposter syndrome that happens every single time. And it happened to every single author I've talked to who's written Star Wars. And I think we had this conversation too, where you sit down because you've got the book idea and you know how to write a book. And then all of a sudden you're like, holy, every expletive, this is Star Wars. How do I do this? And it was like that, except it was like to another level where they were like, do you want to work on this project? I'm like, this sounds like a dream come true. Are you sure you want me? Like are you sure? And they're like, we love your books. Like, we love your, like, because I had already done the Lando book. And it came out, and of course it came out kind of in like the unhappy rumblings of Solo. So like people were like, oh, really already put out, like been out of shape by the movie. And so I was like, man, that was great. I got to write a Star Wars book. And they're like, would you like to write lots more? And I was like, yes. So it was one of those things where it happened. And like, I don't think, if you're a writer, then you understand this, but I don't think like regular people have this like hamster wheel of doubt in their brain. I mean, maybe that's the anxiety. Maybe that's not writing at all. Maybe that's the anxiety. But it's like, as soon as they were like, yes, you should be part of this team, I was like, great, who else is on the team? They're like, we're going to let you know, like, you know, afterwards. And then when I found out who else was on the team, you know, Claudia Gray and Daniel Jose Older and Charles Soule and Kevin Scott, I was like, I'm in the wrong place. Like, I have to go home. I can't do. And they're like, no, like, and so it was like this very surreal, super exciting moment where you're like, yes, you can be part of the fandom. Because like this has always been, even like for me, being part of fandoms has always been hard because there's a lot of people who don't want certain people in their fandoms. And so like I've talked to a lot of fans, especially fans of color, who have said the same thing, where they've found pushback. And I think now that we have the internet age where people can find their groups, it's a little easier. But like if you were somebody who went to cons like in the 90s, it was hard being a girl at a con, let alone like a person of color. So that was kind of like finally, like I felt like I had permission to like embrace the geeky things I love. Which is really a strange feeling to have as a grown ass adult, right? You're like, you can like these things. I'm like, are you sure? Am I allowed?
Also, it's a tax break.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know.
Speaking of adults.
So it's been really great because it's like it's unlike any other kind of Star Wars writing. Because you've done a number of books too, so like there's always like I always call it like guardrails, so you don't drive off the road. Like, there's a lot of guardrails. There were less guardrails in the High Republic. Our guardrails were each other. So it required like very early on to like figure out, okay, like if we're in a room and we're talking about lightsabers, I need to know like what is Cab going to say about lightsabers? What is Charles going to say about lightsabers? Daniel's just going to say something funny. So
that's fine.
Like, okay, yeah, he's figure something off the wall. Like what? And then like Claudia's going to have like this deep interest.
I was going to say, and then Claudia's going to be super meaningful, and then you're going to be like, why didn't I think of that?
And I'm like, oh man. So it was one of those things that's like, it was less having to trust myself, I realized, and trust the other writers I was working with,
right?
Because we were keeping everybody together. And I think that's what's really fun. Like, so when people are like, I'm not going to read your book, I'm just going to read Charles. I'm like, that's cool, because like the stuff that's in there, like I worked on and Kat worked on. So like when Charles hit the list and when I hit the list, it's not like I'm just not the one hitting the list. Everybody on the team is also hitting the list, right? We've all worked on this together. And that's really cool because you don't get a lot of that collaborative writing in publishing, right? Like usually it's you and your computer screen and like the spiral of doom. That is a first draft. But,
yeah. Well, I remember like when I was doing Queen's Shadow, which was my second Star Wars book, I was a little bit braver. So I was a little bit kind of like throwing more things out there. And I had written Captain Panaka as this like funny sort of like avuncular guy. And then I got on an airplane to go to a convention and I read Princess of Alderaan on the plane. And when I landed, I emailed Jen Heddle, our editor, and was like, hey, just read Princess of Alderaan. I guess we're changing Panaka in the second draft, ? And because he's totally different. Like Claudia's arc of his character was more like the Legends arc. So I had to go back to that and sort of do some unpacking. But I had to come up with a reason for him and Padme to have a falling out. And I didn't know what that was going to be for weeks. I was like, what am I going to do? What are they going to fight about? Like, what could be important enough for them to fight about? And then I was doing the Battlefront 2 playthrough, and there's the ion cannon on Naboo. And I emailed Story Group immediately, and I was like, can I have the ion cannon? I need it for reasons. And they were like, yes. And I was like, okay, cool, thanks. And that's what they fell out over. So a lot of the times, my collaboration with Star Wars is in the editorial phase.
Yeah.
Sort of not, it's still fun and it's still like, I don't want to say it's like catching up afterwards, because you do I like it because they're not going to tell me everything. I still get to experience things without spoilers. But what was it like sort of experiencing that world building and that collaboration like from the start?
It was kind of like watching your kid grow up. If that's such a weird analogy. How about your puppy, right?
Okay.
If you've had a puppy or a kitten or a cat, because like you start, like my dog is like 9 years old, so he's at the point where I'm like, I love you, don't get any older. And so like I have pictures, like one of the things Apple is really good at as a corporation is playing on the emotions of its users. So like if you have an iPhone, it has like that random thing through your pictures every once in a while, and all my pictures are on my cloud, right? So every once in a while, I'll give me pictures of my dog as a puppy, and I'm just like, oh, he's so cute. Oh, I like him even better now. And watching this project is sort of that way, right? Because you were like in the room, and we came up with ideas, and we came up with the entire story arc, like everything that happened. And then we went away and to write little pieces of it. And like we had the big story beats, we don't have the little small moments that like you're talking about, like the character relationships and those sorts of things. So like when I come back with the first draft, or Charles comes back with the first draft, it's like you're rediscovering the story because now you have like some narrative. And so it's actually really cool because it's like, if I write something and Cav, who's doing the next Del Rey, is like, hey, how are you setting this up in your next story? I'm like, well, this is what I have so far. Does that play with what you did? And he's like, well, no, I did it this way, but why did you do it that way? And it's like, well, I did it this way because of this things in the story. And they're like, oh, okay, I can do that as well. Like that actually makes more sense for so there's a lot of stuff that happens on the fly as well. Like I talk to the rest of the High Republic folks like daily, and not just like on Twitter. I mean, like we have a Slack channel, we have email, we have a once a week call that we jump on and like hash stuff out because it's always moving. And there's so much. There's only 5 of us, but there's so much to keep track of, even within the storytelling we're doing right now, plus the legend stuff, plus the existing canon, because Legends is not canon, but it still exists and everybody knows it exists. But it's just one of those things. It's like it's really, really cool, but it is at the end of the day like watching like your puppy grow up. So you're like, oh, I remember when you were just a little plot point, and now you're a book.
That makes me like incredibly happy as a writer, as your friend, and also as a fan of Star Wars. Like I'm getting it on every level at this point, which please keep talking. So you have the 5 of you, as you mentioned, but there is a ton of art for this. So much art. Can you talk a little bit, or whatever you're allowed to say, about the artists and the art that has been involved? Because like you guys, and I'm talking about like not just cover art and occasional illustrations, you guys have concept art, like all kinds of stuff. What's that like?
That is totally outside of my wheelhouse. I am probably the worst person. I'm so sorry. I am like the worst person to cover art because I'm like, it all looks good.
That's also me. I'm like, you're so good at stuff. I can't do that at all. It looks really good.
We've had Grant Griffin paint stuff. We've had Ian McCaig did a lot of the.
Oh my god.
Phil Noto did some of the concept art. We have more like we get concept art probably because even as we move into the next wave of books and storytelling, like we have more concept art because it's a galaxy. You can't have 5 characters like in a galaxy, right? You gotta broaden it. And the nice thing about books is books don't really have a budget. Yeah. Right? Like you can blow up a spaceship in a book 6 times and no one's gonna get mad at you because you went over the effects budget, right? And so like it's the concept art. Mike Seglain, who's kind of like overseeing the whole thing, he'll send us concept art and he'll be like, hey, here's concept art, what do you think? And I'm always like, yay. And in fact, if I go through my emails of all the emails Mike has sent, like 95% my response is yay, because it's like, that's art, that's nice. And then they'll be like, oh,
good job, team.
Yeah, good job. And then they're like, oh, this is supposed to be this character. I'm like, oh wait, no, that's not what I see them. And yeah, so it's been really, really cool. I actually, if people are interested in the concept art and you have Disney Plus, tomorrow night there's going to be on I think it's the Inside Disney, or I can't remember what the show is called.
It's like Disney Insider this week or something.
Disney like Insider, yeah, that's what. Like there's an Inside and a Disney in the title. My brain is like squashed at the end of this week, cooked squash. But they have a lot of the concept art, and part of what they did was talk to like some of the concept artists, because
That's
I
cool.
mean, like, yeah, I mean, like, because like some of our concept art just came from like, you know, the Disney artists. Like Disney has a lot of artists. They have the animation studio, they have Pixar. And when you go to like the campus in Burbank, like you get to see all these buildings, all these people who do nothing but make art all day. So one of the things that's pretty cool about that is like you should get to see more art. But of course, there will also probably eventually be an art of book, because DK always took out those sweet, sweet art books.
That's exciting. Oh, now I'm thinking about art and I lost track of what my next question was. It'll come back to me in a second. Oh no, wait, I was gonna ask you a question about your book. No, because it was all of the voices. What was it like writing a 4 point of view middle grade?
It started out as a 3 point of view middle grade.
Who got out?
Wait, actually it started yeah, what?
I'm just curious.
Honesty got added last. Yeah. But it started out as, I think, a 1 point of view middle grade, and I was about halfway through that first draft, and I was like, and it was just for Nestra, and I was like, oh, she's a Jedi, and she's like very like much a rule follower, and I'm like, this is not gonna be
very calm.
Very serious. She's just like, I got this. I'm gonna meditate, and then I'm gonna take care of this. And so I was like, oh, kids are gonna hate this. And so then I was like, let me add Avon.
You accidentally wrote E.K. Johnston. She just thinks about her feelings and then does it.
Definitely. All of your Padme books, it's like Padme has some deep thoughts, and then she just goes and gets things done. But yeah, so I was like, oh no, I can't, like, this isn't like middle grade enough. And I wanted to, because Spark of the Resistance had adult main characters in a middle grade, and same thing with Lando's, like we only have like one child character in there. I wanted to make sure it was very child focused.
Yeah.
Because I do think that's important for middle grade. And I did want this to feel a little different than the other books I had written for Star Wars. And so, yeah, and so like I was like, well, why not 4 points? Which, I mean, I guess it turned out okay. But if you hate 4 points of view, trust me, it was not the easiest decision I had ever made. It's just like I felt like I wanted more with each of these characters. And so then I was like, okay, so how's this character feeling here? And how's this character feeling? Because like in middle grade, we do like even though you joke around like that's an E.K. Johnston book, middle grade is really focused in on that emotional journey, right? Yeah. Like that's what's really important for kids. And I know a lot of adults are like, I picked up this book and it was all feelings. And I was like, well, you can't have like 400 pages of kids blowing each other up. That's the Hunger Games. You already did that, right? Like that's a YA book. Yeah. So like it was one of those things where I was like, I just wanted some more time with the characters, which I think for me is always a sign when a draft is working, when I want to be with those characters, where doesn't feel like a slog to go and write those words.
I loved it. At first I was like, oh, I guess we're getting some Avon. And I'm like, oh, I guess we're getting some Emery. And then I was like, oh, I guess they're all going to talk.
Everyone has feelings.
No, I loved it. And it was, as you mentioned, like, it did feel a little bit more like kid focused. I don't know. Like, as I was reading it, I was like, I think my nephew's going to like this one. And he loves Lando. So like, don't get me wrong. But yeah. I think he's going to like this one more because it is that like kid storytelling. And even though Byrne is 16, she still has that sort of like aspirational feel like you get in a middle grade. And like, I'm like, this really reads like a classic middle grade book that happens to be Star Wars rather than the other way around, which I loved. Like, I absolutely loved it. So good job there. But I also loved, in particular, Avon. Because like we see a lot of like Jedi, especially as adults, but also sometimes kids sort of like thinking about the Force and thinking about how the galaxy works and stuff like that. But Avon had a really different perspective for me. Usually the people we get who think about the Force differently are bad guys. Mm-hmm. So to have Avon as that character who wants to like pull it apart and find out how it works and then maybe put it back together, can't see anything going wrong there. Chekhov's, etc. And so like, what was it like to write that brand of sort of inquisitiveness in the Star Wars galaxy? Yeah,
I think so. I am that kid, like even as an adult, right? I like I am endlessly fascinated by the idea of an energy that links us all. And I think about our world and how much we think about things like God and faith and morality. And it seems normal and natural that characters in the Star Wars world would also have those same concerns and feelings and wonderings, like, what do I believe? And I think especially that 12, 13 to like 18, that 12-year-old to 18-year, that's where you're really kind of trying to tackle those big ideas and digest them for yourself. And I wanted to really think about the Force. And one of the things that's nice about this time period is because we know the Jedi are great, right? We don't we keep telling you like the Jedi are great, but they're pretty awesome. If you haven't read the books yet, they're heroic and they're the people we want them to be. They're not the Jedi we see in the prequels where they're already kind of, you can see things aren't 100% going like great. I thought there was no better time to have those conversations about what does it mean, what are the other Force users, right? We can't like it seems really kind of a little foolhardy to think that Jedi are the only Force users, right? It's a big galaxy. We have like thousands of planets, right? And like what are these other belief systems? And so I wanted to have a character who kind of says that out loud and wonders about those things out loud. And even if she doesn't get an answer, she's still willing to investigate and like put time in and answer those questions for herself. Because I do think asking those questions sometimes is what keeps us from falling into the trap of just doing things like they've always been done. Because a lot of times the way things have always been done are not great. And especially if you're one of the voices that was not consulted in the analysis of that way, right? It's like, nobody asked me if we wanted to do it this way. And it's like, well, we're doing it anyway. So I wanted to have her. And plus she's such a great foil for Vernestra, because Vern is just like Vern like believes in the Force and she feels the Force and she believes strongly in the Order and she's good at it, right? And so then you have someone who's just kind of like, hey. And so it just makes such a nice dynamic on the page. And then like, you have, Honesty, who's like, I don't want to be here. And then you have poor Emery, who's like, my heart is broken. But it's not supposed to be, because I know he's my master's of the comic sport. It's like, it's just like so much. That's a slight spoiler, but yeah.
I mean, well, it's going to be my next question, because like one of the things I love in whenever someone's talking to me about Star Wars books and it's like, oh, should I read the middle grades? I'm like, yes, you should read the middle grades for several reasons. They're all fantastic, but also the darkest stuff you can possibly imagine happens in the Star Wars middle grades. Like people are like, I remember when Cav, I love Cav, he's great, but when he put out his Dooku book and he was like, well, it's a little bit darker. I'm like, remember the time Justina wrote a book where a girl had to choose between saving the galaxy and saving her planet, and she chose her planet. And so I love that this middle grade is like, when you get an adult novel, it's like, we're going to go on an adventure. And when you get a middle grade novel, it's like, we're going to get rid of all the adults and then we're going to go on an adventure. So like you were talking about blowing stuff up, and like, I love that sort of, I don't know, is the trope called a Titanic trope? I don't know. When you're like, nothing could possibly go wrong on this ship.
Oh
no. But no, I love that. And like the whole sort of the pace of a Star Wars novel, like so many times when you're writing a Star Wars novel, or I guess when other people are writing a Star Wars novel, you get that feeling of like the stakes have to be really high. And yours was like, I mean, like they're trying not to die, which is pretty high stakes, but it was like the 4 of them. And I love that kind of like really personal story where they're like, and maybe later we'll find out what this emergence thing is. I'm assuming it's important because it's capitalized. And you just kind of get that feeling. So like when you're writing these sort of snapshots, is it kind of like, you just spend the whole time being like when people comment on stuff because they don't know what's going to be big but you do, or like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's actually really fun. I will admit that I am the person who's like, let me like creep on this like fan section where people are talking about stuff. And then I'm just like, they're like, I'm reading this book. And it's not even just mine, right? I love seeing people commenting and talking about Charles's book as well, because it's like, and he's like, this is my favorite character. I'm like,
Apologies.
It's like, oh no, you're gonna have a rough late 2021. And so it's like it's just really fun. It's a lot of fun, and I just really, I think, to be honest, I feel like when the sequel trilogy came out, like there was so much fighting about it. Like you couldn't talk about it and you couldn't just enjoy it. And then like if you had an opinion about it, then all of a sudden like 100 people were going to come tell you why you were wrong or you're right. And it just became like not the way I like the fandom. Like I like to talk about like things with my friends. We've argued about stuff before and like talk about headcanons and stuff like that. And I think for a while, especially because like there was the sequel trilogy was such a lightning rod, it was really hard to be like in the fandom and just be like, I like this, I don't like this, because everything you did, it was supposed to have a deeper meaning instead of just like a thing you liked. And one of the things I do love about like the books is the books have never really done that, right? The books are literally, people are like, I love this book, and people are like, I don't read the books. You're like, okay, I'll see you. And so it's nice to have new material that's in the books because it feeds for me that like that necessary emotional like sensation of reading a book and like loving things in it and then going out and sharing it. In this case, I'm happen to be one of the people who's working on writing the book, but like reading Charles's book is, I know what's going to happen, but then I also don't know what's going to happen. Like there's always that emotional journey with reading something. Reading my book, like I forget everything I wrote, honestly, like 3 months later. Like, right, like once we're through copy edits, I'm like, I don't know what's in the book. And so people are like, I love this part. I'm like, okay, yeah. I'm like, I don't remember that. So it's also like I'm reading a new thing every time I read it. And so it's been, I don't know, it's been a lot of fun. I honestly think the things you love should bring you joy. like
I agree.
This has brought me joy. Like I don't think anybody should be upset at the end of the time. So
that's fantastic. Ever since Elizabeth sort of was like, it's gonna be this, and I was like, oh my god. Like I'm just so happy that this is happening. I'm happy for all of us, like every single person involved, from Mike on down to the people buying the books. Like it's just gonna be so fantastic.
I think it's so exciting, and especially in this time, right? This time in history, a snapshot in history where everything seems to be made of fire. Like everything is on fire, and then there's more fire. I'll just put this with the rest of the fire napkin. And like it's really nice to like, okay, everything's on fire, but I have this book and I can just sit here and like have a really nice time in the galaxy far away.
Four kids on a planet with acidic rain. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Kira, you're not muted.
No, I know. I didn't want to. I am so enjoying this, and I feel bad for kind of coming in, but I did want to make time for questions, and and so there's all sorts of questions from the audience, and I want to stick with this theme about character and kind of y'all have added brand new original characters to a universe that is so very well established. And one of the questions that came in is about what was the process of creating lead characters to live in the Star Wars universe. I think it's really interesting that we're living in a space and time where we're making new characters that are interacting with old, well-known, legendary characters, and then we're making new characters in new times doing new things. So can you, either of you, actually speak a little bit to how that works, and since you're working with so many other writers, how is that process fun? Is that process weird? Do you have to get them all like green lighted? What happens?
I will tell you that creating new characters is surprisingly easy because you're like, oh, I need a character from this plot point. Do I have anybody who can do this? No? Okay, we're going to be a new person. Then we just put them in. For me, I have always been encouraged to create characters and add characters to my storytelling. Kate, I'm sure it's the same. You're working a little more closely with the Padme stuff, so that's a little bit.
Yeah, Ahsoka was different, but Padme was Padme's a little bit different. I still consider the
Yeah.
Padme stuff character building because like the handmaidens don't have line. Well, one of them has a line, but most of them don't have like names that are said on
I know the
screen.
one line is like, "I'm sorry, Your Highness." That's all. That's her
Yeah,
one
there's
line.
well, but yeah, Corday gets a line when she's dying. But I just meant in the Phantom
That's
Menace,
right.
like in the Phantom Menace.
Oh, Phantom Menace. Okay.
In the Phantom Menace, Rabe says like Anakin Skywalker is here, and that's it. Like and like obviously Sabe says a bunch when she's Padme, but people don't know.
I don't think I even knew what the handmaidens had names until I read your book, to be honest.
Yeah, people are like, how did you name the handmaidens? I'm like, I read a lot of magazines in 1999. Like, but yeah, so I do consider that character building a little bit, but it's definitely plot point stuff. Like I look for a character I need to do a thing, or the type of person I need to do a thing. And then I try to make someone that doesn't already exist in Star Wars. And with Ahsoka, I was still pretty early on in my like career as a writer and as a character builder. So you might notice there aren't a lot of aliens in that one. But as I've gotten better, I think I've gotten a little bit more adventurous when it comes to character building.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I like we had characters that we basically when we were early on the initiative and we kind of had a rough idea of what the story was we were going to be writing. We all came up with like different types of characters, right? And so like we wanted like who are our Jedi, who are our Republic figures, who are our scoundrels, who are our villains, right? Because scoundrels aren't always the villains. And so like we kind of went through a list and we like kind of brainstormed a bunch of different characters. But really when the character work starts is when you start writing the book. And that's when you realize you're like, oh, we made this character like this. Is anybody else using this character? And can we make them like this instead? And people are always like, no, I'm not using my character, do whatever. And so a lot of that character work happens like when you go away. And then you come back to the rest of the group and you're like, oh, this is what I did with these characters. Because like they are the characters are going to like jump through the media. So if you're just like a person who's like, I only read the Del Reys, you're probably not going to meet as many of the characters if you read the different formats. If you're like, I'm going to read everything, you're going to meet lots of different kinds of characters. And probably be tired. You're going to need a nap. So like, yeah. So I think for me, characters are always a matter of the story. And I also sometimes take characters out. If I find characters are serving the same purpose, right? Like I just talked about Avon kind of being a foil for Vern. If I like found like there was like more than one character that was all being foil for Vern, I would have been like, okay, I don't need these other characters. Like I can just make this character stronger. Because for me, like I would say probably anything. Well, I'm gonna shoot myself in the foot because I was like 4 points of view is too many, but I think the YA has like 5. and I'm just like, oh no. I do. But I think Explore is like for me like the happy place for points of view. I think anything more than that, it's usually like it's too messy. It gets hard to figure out. And then you like that one point of view better than anybody else's, and you're just waiting throughout the book for that character to come back around. And for me, it's always the character that has the least number of scenes, and I'm like, man. Yeah.
That's amazing. So let's keep talking about Vern for a second, because if somebody wants to know a little bit more about her and about how she is a prodigy in the order, and really wants to be part of it all. And she asks, what are her motivations? What are Vern's motivations? I
think Vern wants to be the best around, which is a Karate Kid song if you don't know that, because
we do.
Yeah, so I think like Vern is our Hermione, right? If you think of like what was Hermione, like Hermione just wanted to be the best, and then later on you find out like, oh, she's got a chip on her shoulder because her parents didn't have powers. But like Vern is really just like, she loves being a Jedi. She has a strong connection to the Force. And you guys haven't gotten Claudia Gray's Into the Dark yet, but you're going to meet Reese in there, who's a little different. He's a very different Jedi. He's still a Padawan, and it's a little harder for him to be a Jedi, right? He's got to work for it. Whereas for Vern, she's kind of like naturally good at it. And we've all known a Vern in our life, right? That was usually the girl who was on all the sports teams because she was like just showed up and like ran really fast. It was usually the girl who was on like, the valedictorian and also the class president. And also, and like sometimes, maybe she worked hard for it, but it just seemed like everything came really easy to her. And so I really wanted to have a character who was active in the order and who we're kind of like watching go through this change. Because I mean, if you characters don't change, they're boring. So, you know, we're starting out with Vern in a place where she is like, I'm, you know, I am a Jedi. I know how to be a Jedi. And then during a test of courage, she's kind of like presented with some challenges that she's not expecting. And she's like, well, of course, this is how we do things. And then when it doesn't work out the way she thinks it should, you know, she's gonna kind of have to take a step back. And so I think it's really important, especially when we're doing our storytelling, is to show like even if people are good at something, there's going to be other things that they're not good at. And so for her, I wanted to take out the whole, you know, like we have in the Marvel comics, we have Keith Trennis, who has kind of like a little bit of that imposter syndrome I was talking about earlier, where she's been newly knighted, she's on Starlight Beacon with all these other great Jedi, and she's like, how am I here? Like how am I here? Like I got the Force and all that. Yeah, I get it. But how am I here with all these like, you know, heroes? And so I wanted to have a character who that wasn't her arc. Her arc is like, what if I'm not right? What if this isn't the right answer? What if I miss something? And so we're gonna see that develop, because I think like when you're in a system and when you're participating in something that you're really good at, you don't necessarily stop and evaluate if your way is the best way or if there's other ways that could be as well.
Yes, all of that. Yes, all of that hit on all the levels. And I'm gonna have to go back later and write that part about why, like, how is it me right here, right now? Like that is such a thought. That is a real thought that really goes through the head. Yes. All right. Next question has to do just with the conception of the High Republic to begin with. Where did it come from? And more importantly, and this is a question for the both of you, what is your favorite part of this new canon? What aspect of it? What little thing? And I think that you could have a little fun with this. Like, is there literally a little trinket in the High Republic that's amazing and you love it and you're so glad it's there? You know, like what kind of fun, super nerdy, oh my goodness, this is the best thing ever, delicious thing is in the High Republic that you just love?
I don't know much about the High Republic, but I do know Daniel Jose Older, and that means that I'm pretty sure we're going to get dinosaurs at some point.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to get dinosaurs.
They might have lightsabers.
I tried Triceratops.
Yeah, like a Triceratops. It's like, yeah.
Oh, Kyber crystals. Sorry.
Yeah. I dream big.
Are
thinking about it? I'm just like, does it have? Are these the lightsabers? I'm having a lot of trouble with it. It's like, they're just like, vroom, 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 vroom.
In love with all the critters we're getting. The Charhound in Light of a Jedi, if you guys haven't read it, Ember is like a dog. It's cool. It's a dog. And then Daniel has this character named Cham Cham. And Google it, it's worth it, because I'm sure some of the concept art is up on StarWars.com. And it's like, it's somewhere between like a scorpion and like a bat that's also sort of like a little chihuahua that you would keep with you, and then like all of a sudden gets vicious when it's just the most bananas little creature. And it's in the High Republic Adventures comics that come out next month from IDW. And I'm just like, I am like, people joke and make fun of me about my love for porgs and Ewoks, but that's literally the thing. Like Tukas, like we went to Lost Cats, we went to we went to Galaxy's Edge before the pandemic set in, which was perfect timing because it was like February. And it's like when things get back and people can start going to the parks again, there is a pet store inside of the Galaxy's Edge, right, with all these little Star Wars pets. And they were finally like, Justina, we gotta go. Like, are you gonna buy something? Because I was just like, look, there's a Minoc in there. Like, and I was like, there's a Minoc, and they're like, oh my god, because I have always loved like the creature part of it. You're looking at me, Caroline.
No, I want to go to there. No, I want to go to there so badly. Like, I'm not going to tell my husband because he'll be like, we're going. Like, yes.
So cool. And so like, that's really what I'm excited about, because there's like, literally in the YA, one of the notes I got was like, why does everyone have a pet? And my note back was like, people have pets. I'm like, I feel like everyone should, like, it's like writing this book during the pandemic. I'm like, you need your pets.
Yeah.
You need your pets.
Everyone gets an emotional support scorpion chihuahua thingy.
Chihuahua thing, yeah.
Yes. They're all cute and they make us feel better, and that's okay. Yes.
That's great.
So tell us about it. Do you? I'm going to ask you if you know. I'm sure you know, like, about the conception of the High Republic, and how it kind of came to be.
I know so much, and I'm not going to tell anything because I don't even know what I'm supposed to talk about. Like, like I don't know what I should say, and what is like a documentary later to be disclosed. So yeah, so I will say, if you watch like the teaser, the trailer they released in February, and then definitely if you find, I mean, like, even if you don't have Disney Plus, I'm sure if you like wait around, the internet will provide what you need. The Disney Plus, I think they're going to cover some of it. But as far as the concept, I can tell you, like, I got a call. They said, do you want to participate? The first time we went to Skywalker Ranch, they're like, what do you love about Star Wars? What would you like to see in a new era of Star Wars? And then the second time we broke story. And that's literally it. And then of course there's like, I can do inside baseball stuff. But I'm not going to because a girl has to have some mystery in her life.
I need more. Like, the mystery is even better than the books, y'all. Like, come on, somebody give me something. What?
Honestly, it's not as exciting as like people think it is. It's a lot of like sitting in a room with coffee and like yelling about plot points and then asking like why. And it's like, okay, if that's why, then what about this thing and that thing and this thing, right? It's just like a lot of bringing up ideas and then trying to like beat them into a pulp and see if they withstand that beating. So it's I mean, I love it. I love breaking story. I love writing stories. But it's not glamorous. It's a lot of this.
That's about right. Yeah, that sounds about right. I believe that.
Yeah.
I totally believe that. Yeah. Well, so then, if you could choose to transport or teleport, no, transport, we'll go with transport yourself into any other part of this galaxy or this timeline or this canon, and you had free reign to write anything you wanted, what would be your next story in this universe?
Your next story. I want to know what I'm sorry, EK.
I have so many thoughts.
This is a dangerous question.
I know. And somebody else submitted it. It wasn't even, this was not my genius. So I'm just going to sit here and continue to think about like lightsaber, like just triceratops, because I think that's a whole story in itself.
Yeah. I would love to get the story of Satine and Bo-Katan and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon during the year that they were on the run from each other, where it's like during the Mandalorian Civil War, and mostly because I think like I would write it as a rom-com because that would be funny, and Qui-Gon would just be like, this is how condoms work, make good choices, have fun. And the but it's this idea of like this tremendously like political story about two sisters who just come up on the different sides, and I love that so much. And I mean, I would love to write it. I would love if Claudia got to write it. Like, it would be amazing. So I think basically as long as someone gets to experience that story and then I get to consume it in some fashion, that would be fantastic.
Incredibly specific thing. I think it's really funny because my incredibly specific thing is literally Mace Windu after Revenge of the Sith, because my look, he did not die when he saw out that window. I am convinced there's a story there, and I'm I'm sort of hoping they bring Mace out in like maybe like the Mandalorian or something, or some of the other media. Because I really feel like there's so much there that you could do with like storytelling, especially like you were part of this organization and now all of your friends are dead or you think they're dead, and like where do you go from there? And like you're still you're on the run, you're trying to, and I know they did a little bit of that with the I just lost a video game where they had, I guess I was so bad at it, I had to stop playing this game. I was like sucked so bad.
Fallen Order.
Yeah, that one.
I was like, Fallen Jedi. Nope.
Yeah, I was like, it was like so hard. I was like, I don't know, I can't do it. And then so I just finally gave up because I was like, I just went and Googled the walkthrough so I could see what happened in the story. But like, yeah, like I feel like the nice thing about the movies is they're so narrowly focused on these little events. There's so many questions you can ask about what's happening to other people and what else is going on, that it leads itself to like a lot of robust storytelling. So yeah, I'm really pulling for like a poor Mace Windu. I just want to give him a better end.
You just made me think about it though, and now I'm like, almost all of the stories about Jedi doing stuff we have in terms of survivors are kids. Obi-Wan is sitting in the desert, and Dagobah is sitting, and Yoda is sitting on Dagobah, presumably eating everything. And we don't have like an old person like wandering around and being like, well, shoot, like they all die.
No.
Like, every time we get one in the Vader comic, they get murdered, and every time like they just don't last. So I think it would be a really excellent story to just have like Wedge Antilles in Resistance Reborn, but a Jedi in like Rebels. Old just wants to farm chickens. Like
just wants to farm chickens.
Just let me raise these space chickens in peace.
Yeah.
Please let me be cool. Like, please. I love it. Oh, I love it. Okay, we only have 8 minutes left, and that's not fair because I'm having the best time. I'm just looking at the rest of the questions. Somebody wants to know what your favorite thing about the High Republic canon is. So we talked about stuff, but we did not talk about canon. So what's the favorite part of the canon for this for y'all?
I don't know if you're allowed. Are you allowed to have a favorite if it's like the stuff you're working on?
I do all the time.
Yeah, right? You can pull on the thread. What's the favorite thread?
It's
mine's
stuff
Avon.
that I can't talk about yet. There's so much cool, like I know, like I feel like it's what's so great about this is people have like embraced it so fully that people are like, what about this? What about this? I'm like, these are the first books the beginning. like this is like the opening act. Like we got so much other storytelling we're heading your way. So I don't know that I have a favorite yet. I have a lot of characters I like. Kevin Scott has a character who is sort of a saber for hire named Ty Yorick.
Mm-hmm.
And she's pretty cool. And then like, we have Avar, we have Keith Trennis, who's also like really cool. Skier, who was like your lizard Jedi uncle, like a stern lizard Jedi uncle. I mean, like it's really exciting time, I think, to be a Jedi. It's a really exciting time to be a Jedi. It's a really exciting time to be a Jedi. This is true, but it's also an exciting time to be a fan. Because even like with like the books, we have so much other media that's coming that I'm just like, don't make me pick. Like, it's all good. It's all good.
Like, don't make me pick. It's only been a week.
I'm like so tired. I'm like, why am I so tired? I'm like, I didn't eat lunch today. Like, I forgot to eat. When I jumped on here, I was like trying to like shovel some rice in my mouth because I'm just like, it's just like been nonstop, but it's so good. It's like such a good kind of tired. And I'm like, Kate, I'm actually really glad. I just want to, before we go, I just want to make sure that everybody knows to pick up your books, because I'm like, you were like probably the loudest, most vocal person who was like, you should write Star Wars. You should write Star Wars. I'm like, no. And you're like, no, you'd like it. You'd be really good at it. And so like, I just want to like thank you for like being here, because it really means a lot to me that you're here to celebrate this.
I remember it was a hot tub, but I don't remember where the hot tub was.
It was in Tennessee. It was in that
was it Austin?
No, it was definitely Tennessee, because I didn't go to the writing retreat. It was
we were in a writing retreat. We were in a hot tub at a writing retreat, and Justina was like, I don't know if I can write Star Wars. And I was like, you should definitely write Star Wars. And it was like a short enough time afterwards that like Lando's Luck got announced. I'm like, did you lie to me in the hot tub? And she
know,
was
like,
like,
no,
no, I was telling
There's no lies in the hot tub. You can't lie in hot tubs.
I
No
would
lies in hot
expect
tubs.
I mean, it would have been so much worse. I literally lied to people for more than a year about the first Padme book. So like my like admiration for people who can look me dead in the face and be like, oh, I would love to write a Star Wars book, is really high. But it was funny because it was like a short enough period of time that when it was announced, I was like,
Hey, so can we talk about that for a second? Just as a writer myself, and I know that COVID has made this all kind of topsy turvy. But y'all are two writers, like, for real, and you go to cons and you've made this happen, and we know it's a journey. It's a real journey. Do you have any advice for any of the aspiring writers who might be here in the audience about where was that moment where you felt like I broke through here, or this is mine, I'm part of this now, I'm up in here, you know what I mean? I want to know that moment, and then I want to go back to that moment you talked about before about, but how did I get here? I know I'm good at this, I know I earned this, but how did I get here? Like, can we just take these minutes to talk about those two moments for y'all?
It's definitely a cycle. Like, you go around and around and around between them. And like, the first time I met Ashley Eckstein, or the first time I saw a picture of her with the book, she tweeted about it, and all of a sudden I had like 500 more followers on Instagram. Like, there's just that kind of thing where you're like, I mean, I know I wrote a good book, but also there are 2,000 people who are really excited that I'm here. That seems like a lot of people to be excited about. And so it's definitely like a cycle because it happens every time. And you're always like, oh yeah, I'm totally cool about all of this stuff. And then you're like, wait, is that Freddie Prinze Jr.? While you're in an elevator. Like, I saw Pedro Pascal. Oh my God, I'm not kidding. I saw Pedro Pascal at Celebration in Chicago, and like, I was doing the Star Wars Live show, so I was on stage, and then I came into the green room, and the whole Mandalorian cast was in the green room. And my friend Emma was having like both of our backpacks sitting on the arm of the sofa, and we just like sat there and stared at the floor because he was so unbelievably attractive that like we couldn't look at his face. And like, Carl Weathers was amazing. He talked to us the entire time, and we were both clearly losing our minds. Like, it was amazing. And like, that keeps happening.
That's so cool.
So it's just it's basically just that over and over and over again. But then the thing that I always remember is you get kids, and sometimes not kids, like sometimes grown-ups, who have that feeling when they meet you. And it's so weird. It's amazing, but it is it really puts it in perspective, because you're like, I am so excited to meet this person who does this thing that I kind of understand but love, and then there's some kid who's like, oh my God, are you E.K. Johnston? And I'm like, I'm not that cool. Like, I'm literally wearing pajamas from the waist down right now. There's not a lot going on here. And I don't know, Justina, if you've had like quite the same stuff, because I know I tend to
Exactly. I saw Billy D. Williams coming out of the elevator as I was getting on the elevator at New York Comic Con, because we were staying on the same floor because Disney had both of our hotels. Yeah, and I was like, whoa! I wrote a book about you. I was like, why do I have my book to hand him? But it actually has a Donald Glover Lando on the cover, so it was really actually really confusing for him. But yeah, but I think if you're an aspiring author and you're like, how do I get where they are? You can do it. Write your books. And I think that's the biggest thing, is like, we didn't start out writing Star Wars. No one starts out writing Star Wars. Everybody starts out writing their own stories. And so if you are writing a story that makes you happy, it makes you frustrated, who makes you angry, but then makes you happy again, that's totally normal. That's how a book works. And you should stick with that. And I think you should write the story that speaks to your heart, because that will always come true. Like EK's first book, True Story Owen, right?
Story of Owen,
Story of Owen. I always had a true story. I don't know why.
That works. That's fine.
I wanted to be an expose of Owen. But like, that book, like, that is like all of your books. Like, that is of all the books, that is, I think, the most you book. That is the book 100%. I feel like. Yeah, like, I am talking right now, and I hope I don't offend. But yeah, like, I think it's like, that's one of the things that you have to start with. Like, you have to understand who you are as a storyteller before you can go do stuff like other media, like Star Wars or whatever you're interested in. And so I think that's always my advice is like, you know, fan fiction, you know, people like might say things about fan fiction. It's a great way to learn how to write a story. It's a great way to get feedback from other fans and from other people, because they're going to tell you when your stories aren't working. So, you know, don't be afraid to dip in.
Yeah, it's a great way to do character too, because it's there, and then you can write like the payoff that you might not have got. I come from a huge fan fiction background. I started writing fanfic in like 2002. I wrote fan fiction last year, so like I'm still doing it.
A lot of writing.
And it's definitely like, it's how I know my crit group. It's how I know all of the authors who were like, no, I think you can write a book that first nano, when I was like, I don't know if I can write a book. And it's definitely like finishing something is hard, but it's definitely like, it's how you get it done, because you can fix it after it's done. You can.
Yes, Lordy. It's so true. Yeah. Oh, Lordy, that is so true. That is so true. We are overtime. It's 8:01, and this just, first of all, this flew by, and second of all, this was just so cool and the bestest. I just this is the best. Just thank you. Are there any other just like random thoughts before we say goodnight to our audience that has stuck with us this whole time? Yes.
I know.
Yes.
Thanks, friends.
Yes, thanks so much. Justina, what are you working on next?
So my next Star Wars is Out of the Shadows. Yeah, I think it's a plural. Out of the Shadows. It comes out, I think, July. And then I'm also working on a manga with another writer. And that, I think, comes out beginning of June. But if you're looking for something in the non-Star Wars variety, my first middle grade is coming out in May. My first me middle grade, and it's called Opie's Ghost. So I'm pretty excited. I'm so tired.
I'm so impressed.
Yeah.
So much. What's next for you? You have something coming out this year too, right?
I do.
Second
I have
no.
Second
Ahsoka.
You gotta like skywrite that above wherever Dave Filoni lives.
Much manifestation for you.
Yes. No, I do have a book coming out this year. It is called Etherbound. It comes out May 25th. It is a YA space opera about a girl who converts the calories she eats into magic. Whoa. And her family has restricted her caloric intake so that she can't practice magic. And when she escapes, she finds out that she is pretty darn powerful.
Whoa.
That's awesome.
It's kind of like Jupiter Ascending by way of the Fisher King. Possibly the Fisher King by way of Jupiter Ascending. I'm not really sure. One of those.
Like one of those.
Yeah, well, all of these sound great. That all sounds awesome. All of y'all out there can go pick them up at your local independent bookstore. But in the meantime, please, so just to be clear, we've been here celebrating a test of courage amongst all other things Star Wars. Justina's new book, In the High Republic Universe. It is awesome. Go pick it up at a independent bookstore near you. If you are local, you can come visit us at the Silver Unicorn, where not only do we have this book, but we have cool flashing buttons. You want those. And if you want it from us, you can find us at silverunicornbooks.com, or you can visit a local independent bookstore near you. And I want to give a shout out to a special bookstore in Silver Spring, Maryland called Loyalty Bookstores. And you can find them at loyaltybookstores.com. They are currently, their shops are closed right now just because of all of the chaos going on in the DC area, and we just want to show a little bit of extra independent bookstore love. So if you don't want to pick up this book from us at silverunicornbooks.com, we hope that you will support Loyalty Bookstores during this kind of crazy time. This should be a really great selling time for them because it's inauguration time, but instead we're doing this other kind of thing. So we just want to show them a little bit of love this evening. No matter what, independent bookstores need you during this crazy time. So go find one near you and buy a book for yourself and someone you love.
Yes.
So there. This was amazing. I hope that you will come back and see us sometime soon with your upcoming projects, because this was amazing.
Anytime.
Thank you so much.
You have my email address now.
Will not abuse that. No, seriously, will not abuse that. I'm so grateful. This really was just like the super coolest thing ever. So just thank you so much. Everybody who is here, And y'all too. Stay safe out there. Stay healthy out there. Keep reading. We'll see you soon. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.